Welcome everyone to tonight's live stream. Tonight we're going to be talking about mindset. I guess is the best way I can describe it, but really it's kind of like getting mentally prepared to do a lifestyle change, which is really what happens when you start to look into diet. When you learn what it takes to get energy, which is all due to the growth of healthy probiotics in your gut. That's going to require a lifestyle change, and it's not always easy, right? And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. I'm going to share a little bit of my story and, kind of walk people through some of the things that, they need to prepare themselves for. So before we get started, I want to congratulate everyone who is in the energy and fat loss study group. We're getting ready to get started, so we're just kind of like setting up, but we're going to be kicking off with a hydration challenge, and we are essentially going to take everything that we've shared over the last few weeks, but now we're going to put it into application, because there's a big difference between just learning about hydration, learning about water and minerals, and actually learning how to use water and minerals as a tool, because the way that you would apply it for your body is going to be different than the way that I apply it for my body. It's different than the way that, you will apply it for your body. So everyone has a unique microbiome. And I guess that's been my advantage, is that I understand, how do you make these adjustments in water and minerals? And that's what I'm trying to teach to other people, like not like the full knowledge necessarily, but like, how do you use it for your microbiome? Like, how do you use it for your, for your body to get energy, that sort of stuff. So that being said, I'm here with my beautiful wife and co-host, Leah.
Hello.
So Leah, I know that one of the things that we talk about a lot is, when we're helping people, get started and go through this process, we always talk about having a why.
Mhm.
So do you want to share maybe a little bit about, your take on that, and, maybe help people understand like why it's important, and maybe how do they come up with a why?
Well, that's a lot to ask in one question, but I think your why is a part of a lot of different programs, and I think it's something that people easily brush off, um, just because obviously, people are here to lose weight, gain more energy, get better sleep, and those are all really good reasons to improve your health. But I think the more specific that you can be about the results that you're looking for, and really to get behind a little bit deeper than some of the like surface level whys that I mean, it's easy to say,
Right.
but I think your why can really go a lot deeper than that, and it can kind of change and evolve as
Yeah.
time goes on. And especially as you learn things about health, you can develop new reasons that are motivating, because you do need to stay motivated,
Yeah.
because there's always going to be the temptation and the opportunity to make different choices. So if you're really strong in your why that you're doing it, it's easier to make those choices in the difficult situations, especially social situations.
Yep. And you said a lot in there. Like, you pretty much told people how to put together like a better why, but also like why it's important. So, um, I think that maybe a lot of people may not know this about me, or maybe they do, or I don't know. But for maybe people who are newer and haven't like really, gotten to know like my full story, they may not know that I kind of tiptoed around with this information for about 7 years. Like, I started learning about gut health back in like 2012. And I did a lot of research. Like, I was learning a lot. I was experimenting a lot, but I never really got to a point where I'm like, I'm gonna go all in,
Mhm.
and I'm gonna try out, this method, right? Like, it was basically a method. And I think it was because it was just so weird, even for me, to think that the way for me to design a diet, that the best way for me to design a diet was based on what helps grow healthy probiotics in your gut. Because when you start to think in those terms, it
Mhm.
really changes like everything that you may think you know about food. Like counting calories doesn't matter. Your macros don't really matter, whether you go vegan, carnivore, keto, paleo, like none of that matters. Eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner, like that goes out the window. Like pretty much like everything that I had learned that I thought I knew about diet, it just didn't apply, right? Like I used to think like, oh, I eat healthy because I was buying organic stuff, but that doesn't really matter either. Like there's a
Mhm.
lot more to it. And I didn't really understand like the full concept, which is probably why I wasn't really in a position where I would say, this makes sense and I'm going to just go all in on it for the first 7 years. And so I think it's important for me to share that with people because sometimes, when I share my story and I talk about, you know, now that I know how it works, now that I've actually done it, now that I've actually mapped out the whole process for myself and to be able to like teach other people, I've got it down to where I know that if people were to do the process the way that I have it laid out, the way that I understand it, in about 90 days, like 3 to 6 months, they can get the results that took me 10 years to accomplish. And that's a big promise. But there's a few ifs. One of those ifs is if you do the program exactly as laid out, step by step, like if I were to give you like a Lego manual essentially, and you just get to assemble the pieces and you put them together, like you can get those results. But that is kind of assuming that you're going to put blinders on and do nothing else but follow this. And 3 to 6 months is actually a long time when we're talking about making lifestyle or diet changes. So, were you about to say something?
Yeah, so it sounds like, I mean, this obviously took you a long time to come up with this. And it is definitely skills that you need to learn that become habits and lifestyle changes to where you're really like living out um growing like the idea behind growing probiotics in your gut. And
Right.
there are a lot of different layers to understanding things and improvements that you can make as you go. I think one of the things that may kind of throws people off when you try to explain it overall
Hmm.
is just that you're not gonna understand um, the changes by like reading food labels. Like there's not gonna be a food label to tell you like this is your
Right.
diet. You do have to use um, you do have to use discernment in making choices and really try to understand kind of how the body works to be able to apply the concepts.
Right. I mean, it kind of goes back to like what I was saying earlier that everything that I thought I knew about diet like kind of went out the window. And it's a lot harder than you might think to do some of the things, not because they are hard to do, but because you're kind of like questioning like, wait, I thought it was like different or the opposite, or and there's like a lot of beliefs, I guess, that people have to overcome. And so, going back to like motivation, like what got me to that point, that I was like, okay, I gotta find out if this is gonna work. And that was because when I first started learning about health, I was in a position where, I mean, I was not really taking care of my health. I was drinking a lot of beer. I was a beer brewer. I wasn't drinking enough water. I didn't like to drink water. And my lifestyle choices, my diet at the time were, they were just not good. And I didn't understand like what was wrong about it, like what was bad about it. Like I just had no clue. But it wasn't until I got to that point where my energy levels were low, right? I was 28 years old. Like I literally felt like I was 84 when I was 28. My energy was just it was horrible. Like I toss and turn at night. I wouldn't be able to get good sleep. I'd wake up and I'm like walking like a zombie, like first, like go to the bathroom, then I want to go eat first thing in the morning because I was always like hungry. Um, and and the weird thing too is like it was getting to that was almost like a progression to where like it felt normal. And I think that's what happens to a lot of people is like they start to, feel that and then kind of like me, I was like, oh, I guess this is what aging is all about. Like I literally thought I'm just getting older. Little did I know that no, like I'm just not treating my body the way that I should. And for me, like the moment that that it changed was when my hair started to fall off, right? Like there was a day I woke up, it was kind of like a quote unquote normal day where like, I'm kind of tired and all that. And I hop in the shower and I'm lathering up my hair. And I just remember like feeling this texture in my hands. And I look down and I see all this hair. And I started looking around, I was like, oh my God, there's like hair like on the shower curtain, like all over the tub. And I'm like, this is just not normal hair loss. Like there's something off going on here. And like that was like that moment that I was like, I got to do something about this because this is just not normal. Right. And so you can get to a point where you're experiencing things and those things kind of give you that motivation, that initial motivation of like, I got to take care of my health. I got to do something. But the reason why, like that was back in like 2012, early 2013. The reason why I tiptoed around for like 7 years was because when I first started, I was doing a lot of detoxes, right? So that's when I started juicing. I started to like, clean out my gut and I started doing some things that I started to like get more energy. I started to sleep better. I started to lose some weight. So like my motivation kind of like went down because I'm like, oh, like I'm feeling better. Like, and you kind of like look at like I know what I did. Like I started to hydrate. I started to, detox my body. And so what happens, right? What happened to me at least was that I felt better. I knew what I could do to feel better, which is almost like kind of what gave me permission to go back to my old life. So I was like, oh, I'm going to go drink beer again. I'm going to eat bad food. And it's okay because if I start to feel bad again, I know that I can go hydrate. I know that I can juice. And I think that's where a lot of people are going to get into trouble, where they start to do things, they know what they're doing to feel good, but then they stop doing them. And part of it is because in their mind they know like, okay, I know I can always do that, like it's there, but this is my lifestyle, like this is what I'm used to, this is just what I do, like this is my habit. And that's kind of like that question of like, what are your current habits? Because part of like having the right mindset is it's really like understanding like what your current habits are and kind of like deciding like, okay, I know that growing probiotics is the most effective way to grow, to get more energy. And if you're able to get your body to produce energy, your body will burn fat. And also for people that struggle with gaining weight, it's also the opposite, where if you're able to get your body to produce energy, that's what gets your body to build muscle. And so if you're starting to gain weight, that's how you would gain weight. But like the key is probiotic growth. So you kind of have to get to a point where you look at that and you say, I don't know what it's going to take. Whatever it takes, I am going to grow healthy probiotics in my gut. And that was for me, 2019 was the first time that I looked at this topic and I said, like I've tiptoed around, I've gone back and forth. I gotta know if this works. Like I just gotta go all in. And that's the mindset that I can't teach that, but it's just something that I can see it when I pick up. And I'm glad that Christina's here watching because I still
Mhm.
remember, and we've talked about this where um I was doing a success story interview, and she's listening to that, and then she just kind of like got this vision of like, I'm gonna get those results, like that's gonna be me, like I claim it, y'all. It's like it's almost like you envision yourself like into the future, and you're like, I'm
Mhm.
gonna do that. Like I don't know how, what, or like I'm going to do it, kind of thing.
Mhm.
Like that's kind of like the first step in creating a strong mindset to go into this topic. From there, it's why. Why why do you want to do it? Like,
Mhm.
right? And so I mean you mentioned this, like in order to have a good why, you got to be specific.
Mhm. Yeah, so I think it's different, like if you have, say, um, something more surface level, or maybe like an event coming up. Like an example would be like, so when all of my health issues started, it was with my skin. And it was just like my skin was getting worse and worse and breaking out, and I couldn't figure out what was going on. And like I was like, well, I'm never going to the swimming pool again. And I like went, I did go to the swimming pool, but I wore like a cover up over into the water. And I was like, this kind of sucks. 'Cause I was living in Arizona at the time. And so, yeah, it just really sucks. And then, like, in preparing for like our wedding was
Mhm.
another time where like I had like had improvements. Everything was going pretty well. I went to a friend's wedding and I was able to wear a dress that like showed more of my skin. And so I was really excited about it. And then after that, I knew like our wedding was coming up. So I was trying, everything I was doing had to do with like that. And I was like, regardless, like it's fine. But and then even before our wedding, I had like issues come up. And then after our wedding, I was still making good choices for my health, but like that couldn't be a reason anymore, you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
And so like having a reason, like an event, or like summer is coming, or summer's coming. Still feels like winter sometimes here in Colorado, but summer's coming. So like, or holidays are always an excuse, like, oh, kind of letting yourself go on the holidays.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, spring is here, summer's coming. So now I gotta like get my bikini body. So it's like it's a cycle of that people get into that
Yeah.
we're able to like justify.
And there's always going to be something in the way. There's always going to be a friend's birthday, a wedding, your birthday, a family or a work event that has food, and like there's just
Mhm.
so many things that you can never get away from, like the social aspects
Yeah.
of avoiding bad foods. But I mean, I think that there's also, like, I know, like in 2019, when I decided, like, okay, I'm going to go all in. Like I gotta know, like, if this beer diet project thing that that I've been dabbling
Mhm.
with, if it works or not. And one of the hardest things for me was that, like at the time, like I kind of, put my friends on notice, and I told them, like, hey, I'm taking a year off. Like I can't go out. I'm just gonna, do my thing. Like I'm doing this experiment full year. I can't go out to eat. I can't go out to drink, like none of that. But that wasn't really the hard part. The hard part was that I knew that it was just gonna be me. And I knew that my family, who were like the closest people to me at the time, they were not going to follow along. Like it was just me. And the sad part about that was that I know that, you know, my family, like they have like their health issues. And it was heartbreaking for me to know that, like, if they were to like do this, they would heal themselves. But I can't make other people do this.
Right.
And and that it was like, I don't, like, even today, like it's still heartbreaking because I see it. And then I see it with, like, people that I meet, And but again, like I just had to like make a decision, like, no, like I'm going to do this with or without. Like if nobody wants to like follow me and do this, like I was at a point where like I don't care, because I know that I was like struggling. Like I know that my energy levels weren't as good as they could be. And I knew that I could do better. And I think that people sometimes feel like they're alone,
Mhm.
struggling with low energy, struggling with sleep. But the thing is, like all these gut issues, there's a reason why they call them a silent disease.
Mhm.
It's because you can't tell by just looking at someone that they're struggling,
Mhm.
right?
Right, and you can see other people struggling and maybe have some insight as to how things could be different, but that's where like the personal why comes into place.
Mm.
Is you're only responsible for your why. You can't be responsible for like all of your family's why, your friends' why. And because, sometimes people make different decisions and it wouldn't be the decision that you would make.
Yeah.
Um, and we can only really be responsible for ourselves. That's
Yeah.
why I think having a why that goes a level deeper, and it can start out one place and then go another. Um, I was kind of writing this out earlier, trying to think about like how my why had evolved. I think a lot of it starts with the initial either like pain or like um, a health problem
Yeah.
coming up, to where like you kind of know some of these basic health things. Like we all kind of know to a certain extent
Right.
what is healthy and what isn't, but we kind of ignore it until you get to a point where like your skin is breaking out,
Hmm.
your hair is falling off, you go to put clothes on and they don't fit anymore. And it's just like that really gets into the whole like mental health,
Yep.
like self-worth, self-confidence, and it kind of
Right.
gets to anxiety. So those get a little bit deeper as to like wanting to feel better and
Mhm.
wanting to have those reasons. You're not sleeping good. And so it all kind of becomes a cycle
Yeah.
of like something that wasn't there. Now it's like this stressor
Yep.
in your life.
And I think that's kind of like that warning, I guess, that I give to people where I say like when you first start, like you're gonna get like like I'm confident about this. Like I know that if you just follow the process, like you're gonna get results. But I also know that as you get results, you're gonna lose motivation to keep going. And so that's the challenge of like, okay, how do I get people to come up with a why to where they decide I'm going to like this is going to be my lifestyle from here on out. Like I'm just because the thing is growing probiotics, it's an everyday decision. Every time you drink something, every time you eat something, you're making a decision. You're doing something that's either helping you cultivate strong probiotics in your gut, or you're doing something that's weakening them.
Mhm.
And I think that it
No pressure.
yeah, no pressure. I mean, it,
Because that can really stress you out. Like, should I eat this? Oh, I'm hungry. I don't know if I should eat this. Like at first, like that is stressful.
it really can be. And I think I laugh because when I first started, like I guess maybe people may not, unless they kind of like know me from before, were like, I love to eat. I love food. And so like when I talk about fasting and all of this, like I love talking about fasting. I hate fasting.
You make it seem like you like it though.
No,
And then I feel secretly bad,
I am
kind of, because I don't
fascinated
like
by the topic.
it.
I hate fasting. I would much rather be eating like all the time. But like that's the thing. It's because I now know like what happens to my body. I I've I've just learned to like discipline myself, and that was not easy. Like I think that's a challenge. I mean,
Mhm.
even for me, I can't make that easy. That's just, I guess, something that we all have to battle through. And, for me, it's every day. Like I just kind of made up my mind, like, okay, one of my whys, because initially, like you said, I had that why of like, well, I want to lose weight. I wanted to like see my six pack abs and I wanted to just, feel good in my body. But as I made progress and, kind of evolved from that, I just started to think like, I was 28 when I started that. And I wish I would have been younger. And I'm only getting older. And I know that the older I get, the harder it becomes to like fix your body if your body is
Mhm.
broken. And I've seen it enough to where I can do good for like 3 months and in one weekend undo the work of 3 months. It's so easy to break stuff. Like you can break stuff overnight and spend the rest of your life trying to fix it. Like I didn't design this world, so I didn't make that like the way that
Mhm.
things are, but that's just,
Mhm.
what I find. And so, part of my why now, it's like, well, if I don't discipline myself now, like when? Am
Mhm.
I gonna wait until I turn 50, 60? Like it's gonna get much harder then. Like I
Mhm.
would much rather just I would much rather
Mhm.
um start now and create habits so that when I'm 50 and when I'm 60, provided I live that long, you never know. But anyways, if I get to that age, I want to feel good.
Mhm.
Like maybe it's PTSD. It's like I felt like 84 when I was 28. I was terrified to grow older. So it's like,
Really?
yeah, I'm like, man, like is this what it feels like?
I think it's because we've normalized a lot of things that really shouldn't be normalized. And for me, as I've learned more and started to feel better and like see different results, some results that I wasn't looking for, like my face cleared up, like any
Mhm.
acne on my face wasn't really a normal thing anymore, unless I have a lot of sugar, which I've side story had an experience with lately, and that was because I totally went off the diet while I was on a work trip, and I could tell the results, and I'm still kind of dealing with that
Mhm.
whole situation. So much so to the most recent work trip I went on, I literally survived on beef jerky and dried fruit and some other things that I brought. And I literally did not care to sit at the table and eat beef jerky. And some people looked at me weird. And some people are like, oh, you made a good choice because some of the food wasn't very good.
Yeah.
And like, I did not care, like, literally at all,
Yeah.
because I can see like
The
what the first trip did, and I still like, yeah, just a lot of stuff from like this year, earlier this year that I
yeah.
know I'm still dealing with. And so I'm very motivated right now. So
But see, that's the thing is like
it's
sometimes it takes you going back to like feeling bad and know the mistakes that you're making.
Mhm.
Because when you went on your first, work trip, like you weren't thinking like, oh, like this trip I'm just going to eat bad and whatever. You were probably like you were kind of preparing. You weren't planning on like eating bad or anything like that. But you came back and you're like, oh no, I made some bad choices and I regret it. And your second trip, you over prepared, but you also probably went through that same, um, change, I guess, or what would you call it? Like you didn't care what people thought about you for being different.
right,
And I think that that is actually one of the themes. It's a big theme actually, on the book, just getting closer to completing, by the way. It's one of the themes that I wrote about because like I've gone through that phase multiple times in different ways. Like, I mean, just making the diet changes for one. The second time was when I started to detox my body, I went raw vegan. And going raw vegan was, it made me feel like an outcast. Like that's the first time that I felt like the black sheep of the family. Because I went to Mexico and they have the best tacos.
They
And
do.
and you're a witness to that. You know how good those are. So you can
Yeah.
imagine, like, I went to visit family and my family's like, wait, you're not eating tacos? Like you're vegan? You don't
Mhm.
eat meat? Like people like my cousins like were, asking me, then like they're kind of like giving me that look of like, what? Like,
Mhm.
and it was like the first time that I felt like, oh my God, like I'm different. Um, and then I went through that when I switched because I knew that, raw vegan was a really good diet to detox. I still love it. I still use it as a tool, but I also knew and learned that you can't produce hormones without cholesterol. And there's no such thing as a plant-based source of cholesterol. So you need,
Mm.
an animal-based source of cholesterol to produce hormones. And so, but making that switch back from like, being vegan to eating well, I was actually going to carnivores, like the opposite end of the spectrum. It felt weird again because, you know, when I was raw vegan, I had developed this mindset of like, oh, well, I'm being healthier because I'm eating vegetables and,
Mhm.
I care for animals. And like, there's like a little bit of
Mhm.
um, you know, thing, I guess, culture, if you will, that was hard to overcome.
Mhm.
And then again, like, I was kind of like doing the whole carnivore thing. It's like, no, there's still like something not right if I just do that. And then I just kind of landed of like, I just need to embrace this uniqueness that I can, you know, go back and forth. But even more so than back and forth is, what do my probiotics need? And what do I want? Because now I'm looking at like, I'm feeding probiotics, but not only am I feeding probiotics, I'm feeding different parts of my body. Like it's very different to like feed your physical body, like your muscles, where you're eating protein or whatever, compared to feeding, say, like your nervous system, right? So like your body, like there's a biochemistry to your body, but there's like also an electromagnetic part of your body. It's
Mhm.
different to eat to feed your brain, right? That's a different part of your body. Like, so there's different ways to like think about it, not to mention that, we talk about optimize your microbiome, and most people kind of relate that to like, oh, optimize your gut. But in reality, your body has like microbiomes in like different areas. So like your gut is one microbiome, your liver is a different microbiome, your kidneys are a different microbiome. And every part has like it's like its own little contained microbiome that has, different bacteria that depend on different things. And so this is why like when I talk to people and I want to, and I'm looking to like, okay, understand what their current situation is, because this is where I get to see differences. Like, okay, if someone is starting out and, maybe they're fairly healthy, so they don't need to do a whole lot. Maybe they don't need to drink as much water, compared to like maybe someone like, like we know people that they have high blood pressure. And so they're starting out in a different place. And the way that they're going to ease into it is going to be different, especially because they're doing something that, you know, in my opinion, like the stuff that they're taking for it is not good for their body. And when they start to do something that's good for the body, it starts to have interactions with that. Like people need to be aware of that. There's a case with like poor fat metabolism. There's a case with, like depending on like skin issues, that's a different microbiome, usually like kidney, gallbladder kind of thing. There's all these different things to keep in mind when you're getting started. And if you don't understand like how everything that you do affects the health of the probiotics that you're growing, you're likely to make mistakes and just not stick with it long term. But you have to learn like a little bit at a time.
Mhm. Yeah, and again, with wanting to stick to things long term, that's again bringing it back to the why. Why are you doing this? And having that deeper motivation.
Mhm.
And I think as you learn more about like how your body works and about our food system, and see results, that can lead to other motivations. Like I know one of the big themes with looking into the food quality is leads to fertility, like infertility, infertile food, and like seedless foods. I know we've mentioned that a lot. Um, and that kind of explains why there's such a, um,
Sorry.
okay, he is refilling his kombucha and that's very distracting. Oh my gosh.
I have to say something when you said about food quality. It's kind of what triggered this. But
Oh,
anyways,
okay. Okay, so fertility with food that we're eating being a big problem in society. So that's another thing that kind of goes into like hormones.
mhm.
And like for me, I used to be on birth control. And now that I've looked into more stuff about like birth control and how that actually isn't the greatest for your hormones,
Yeah.
I regret being on birth control on and off all those years.
Mhm.
And I don't know how that may have affected my skin situation as well, when a lot of times with birth control, they talk about like a benefit of it being like it clears your skin,
Yeah,
when
acne is a
really,
big reason why people
yeah,
get on it.
and actually changing your diet gives you clearer skin than birth control ever will
Yep.
without all of the side effects.
Yeah.
So that's just another bunny trail I've gone onto with my why, is looking into all of the fertility
Yeah.
issues. So
So I was kind of laughing, like, there's definitely going to be challenges. One of the things is like when you start learning about food, you are going to understand that the healthier you want to be, the more inconvenient it is going to become.
right.
Like we, we go get raw milk, right? So like I posted a picture to announce the podcast today, and it was me holding our raw milk that we get from a local farm. Well, we have to drive like 45 minutes one way to get to the farm. So it's like an hour and a half round trip, just to go get raw milk. And that's like the only thing we get. I mean, sometimes they have eggs and cheese, but not always. We usually just get raw milk. It's like that's a long trip just for you just to pick up one item in our kitchen, but it is one of our, staples. Um, but the other side to that, one of my whys really now for food is because as I find food like that, like real raw milk or home brewed kombucha, it tastes so much better that now like I go back, like if I try to go to the store and buy like milk from the store, like
Mhm.
it is gross, like it's disgusting. But for a lot of people, like that's what they know and that's what's normal.
Mhm.
As they start to experience like heirloom foods, like real food, especially if they are prepared like the traditional way, fermented, sourdough or things like that, it's it's just so much better. It tastes so good that I'm like, wow, like, diet isn't really about restricting. It isn't really about cutting out, certain food groups. It's really like, no, like anything that you want to eat, everything that you eat, you can like literally just find a good source of it and you can probably include it in your diet. Now, depending on your starting point, you may have to fix some things. And so that may require you to make some changes initially. But if you fix like your gut flora, you should be able to eat pretty much everything and anything. I mean, there's some of the exceptions, because we're talking about like, the starting point. Like some people may start on like, they're coming off birth control. I've heard people that they have a lot of issues postpartum. I've heard of people that maybe they've had You know, if they're victims, this is like the saddest one for me. Like it even hurts like to say, but like if they're victims of the medical system where they radiate or cut parts of the body, you know, it may make it harder, but it doesn't make it impossible, right? So like, you know, like I know like my dad, for example, he had his gallbladder removed. And so in his case, like I know that he's gonna struggle to digest fat, but it doesn't mean that it changes what works for the body. All that it means is that if he is to consume more fat, then he's going to have to like help his body digest because he's missing a part of his body that would otherwise help him with that part, right? So like, you know, making sure that he's taking either like a source of like bile, a source of fat digestive protein, which usually like your pancreas does release a lot of these fat digestive enzymes. Um, that's basically like what you start to like learn. But all of these things that, you know, like your body has, like in reality, like once you understand, it kind of boils down to like understanding how probiotics digest food.
Mhm.
And that's when you start to understand why choosing like heirloom grains for like bread is better than choosing like conventional grains. It's why you understand why going, you know, driving 45 minutes to pick up raw milk that comes from a Jersey cow that puts out A2 type of milk is better than going to the store and buying pasteurized and homogenized milk coming from a cow that puts out milk with a protein A type of A1 kind of thing,
Mhm.
right? Like it's a lot harder to digest those foods essentially, and they don't taste as good either. So
Yeah, and I think it's really like finding what you're going to be eating in your diet, like very consistently,
mhm.
and making changes with like the things that you're eating the most.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's why I'm like I figured, you know, ground beef was kind of like the staple. I was like, I think I can just do that, and I just found a good source. And it's one of the reasons why it became a staple in my diet is because it was easy for me to get. You know, I would get it shipped. Or if they were at the farmer's market, I would go to the farmer's market and pick it up there. And I would buy it in bulk. So it's like $8 for a pound, which isn't that much. It's actually, I think, less expensive than if I were to go to the store. Because I know like when I go to the store and I try to find organic, which is not even as good as some of the local you know, grass-fed beef that's, you know, from regenerative farms. Um, I think that's it's actually less because there's no middleman, right? Like if you go to the
Mhm.
store, you're paying the price of the beef plus the markup for the store. But if you get it directly from the farmer, you actually, you know, are paying less. It's a little bit more inconvenient, but it's it's good to support local farmers because part of the reason why our food supply is screwed is because there's less people buying from farms and
Mhm.
less people farming. So
Yeah. I do miss the farmers markets in Arizona. That was a weekly thing, whereas here in Colorado, it's like 3 months, maybe
yeah, it is a
3 months.
shorter
It's
season.
really short. So it does really make you like appreciate once you do find a good source of food and it's something that you're eating, then
Yeah.
it does become a lot easier. So you'll learn ways that you can be faster with your food prep and food planning, but you do have to accept that it is more time.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of things that are convenient are not good.
Yeah.
Like if you go to a gas station, for example, there is literally like not a whole lot that you can buy
Not a
at
whole lot. Is there anything?
sometimes
Beef
grass-fed
jerky.
beef jerky,
That's about the only item that you could find. Yeah.
and like at the airport you can find grass-fed beef jerky and organic dried fruit, and sometimes you can find like cheese, like the cheesy crackers that are like keto because they're made with real cheese and yeah.
I don't know. I'm
Those are
skeptical about
the
a lot of
best
things, but
things
yeah,
that I've found in a public
it's
place.
yeah.
It's not a whole lot.
No, it's really hard. But again, I think, just to keep the focus on getting into the right mindset, this is part of it where when you start to make these changes, you have to kind of make up your mind that like you're gonna know that, hey, if you're used to going down to the convenience store that's 5 minutes from your house, that may not be what you do. Like I think that was probably like when I first started making those changes, because I used to like go to, we had a Fry's, in Arizona we have Fry's, which is kind of
Mm,
like Kroger's or King Supers or
Bakers.
yeah, so it's like that kind of store, like a Safeway type of store.
Mm,
And I think like when I had like that switch moment where I was like, wait a second, I would go into that store and then just walk around and it's almost like suddenly became aware of like, wait, this food being sold here isn't real. And I don't think I had that strong of an opinion as like real, but like isn't as good. But then it went from like it isn't as good to like, oh no, like this is not good food at all. And then like I would look around and kind of like see, people walking through and I would see, various things that kind of made me um somewhat uncomfortable, but sad. Where like, because I could see like grandma, for example, like she had at one point she was taking a whole bag of medications, like over 12
mm,
prescriptions or however many she was taking. It was a lot. It was definitely double digits, but one of them, like I remember, like um would give her like it would make her legs swollen, like because of like water retention.
mm,
And I remember like seeing that, and like when I would be out at the stores, I started to like notice that in the people walking around. I was like, oh wow, like they're probably that same. Like I just started to like see it, and like I would like immediately recognize it because I knew what it was. And now like as I've gotten older and met people, it's like pretty much most people that you meet that are over 40, especially over 50, everyone seems to be on something, whether it's like blood pressure, diabetes, some sort of like chronic disease, autoimmune, like something. It's wild, and it's wild because they're doing things that to them just seems normal. And it felt weird to like kind of detach myself from like, okay, I'm not going to that store anymore because I just know that it isn't good. And it was the first time that I forced myself to go to like farmers markets and start to like seek out food elsewhere. And it was almost like another a similar change was, I don't remember what I was looking for. I think it's like when I was getting into personal like body products like deodorants and things like that,
mm,
and kind of realized like before I used to think like, oh, I'm just gonna go to Walmart, and because everything's
mhm.
like in my mind, it's like if they didn't have it at Walmart, it didn't exist.
Right. Yeah, I felt like that for a while too, except Target
Yeah.
or like
See, at least where you went, people had teeth. Where I went, never mind. Anyways, I started to like make that change where like I started to like learn about products and like how they can be toxic. And I started seeking
Mhm.
elsewhere. And then it was the first time that I started looking for different things. And I started to find people that made like more natural products. And then it's almost like I discovered this a whole new world.
Right, that you had no idea was there because it's like normal. It's like what everybody does, so you don't
Yeah.
really know. And what you said earlier about like all the health conditions, we've definitely like accepted and like I mean half of society has a chronic condition, and so we've almost been like, oh, it's okay, like that's just gonna happen to me, like poor me, and now I'm on these all medication and I'm getting old and I have no energy, and when really there are people that are very old that are like doing some like physically demanding stuff,
Yeah.
like athletes.
Yeah.
Like, I know it's probably like a very low percentage, but I want to be like that really fit old person out on the hiking trails, just like passing all of these younger people.
Like that one lady at the incline.
Yeah, I want to be doing the incline in like 10 minutes when I'm 80 or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for some of the listeners, so there's this hike here, Manitou Incline in Colorado, and it's basically it's very steep. It's like
Takes like
2,700 steps, and you're already high in elevation, but yeah, there was this lady, and what was she, like 50?
I don't know. She was definitely older.
She was older than
well
us, but
older than us.
but she's just like hauling, like going up, and she's just like kind of, I mean, she's like feeling empowered because she's just passing everyone on the trail, and she's like proud of her. She's like, this is what 50 like feels like, or something like that.
Uh-huh. And she wasn't, was that the lady that we talked to, or was that a different?
I think we talked to her for a
No.
little bit. Like, we didn't really talk to her, but I know like at some point, like she was, I don't know,
There
it was brief
was
conversation. but-
Okay, no, there was somebody else I'm thinking of on that hike that was doing it for the second time after losing like a bunch of weight.
Yeah.
I think that was a different person.
Yeah, and I used to have the same
But,
thing happening
yeah.
at Camelback in
It
Arizona.
happens
Because
everywhere.
there was this
It's like-
guy, he was like 80 some years old. His name was Sonny, and he used to like hike that thing every day, like 3 times. And I remember like, cause I would do it once, and I'd be like pretty beat, and usually like I would go
Sore
up.
for days.
Yeah, I'd be coming down, and on my way down, he's like on his third climb up, and he's like, "Hey, have a good
Yeah.
one."
Yeah, I want to be one of those old fit people passing everybody on the trails.
So yeah, no, it was so funny. Um,
Oh man, we
so
may have gotten a little off track
I
there,
know,
but
I know, but I
anyways.
mean, this is kind of like what,
That's a specific why though.
but this is like some of those motivations that are gonna come to you when you like further in your journey. Like when you're starting out, you kind of just want to fix a problem.
Right.
And again, like the warning is that if you just focus on fixing the problem, the moment you fix the problem, if your motivation goes out the window, you're likely to go back to your old lifestyle, and you're gonna be in that place where I was for 7 years, where it's like, oh, I can always, do this thing, like, get me my minerals and my fermented cod liver oil and beef organs, and I'll be fine. But if you really want to experience like the transformation that I went through, I mean, I went live for a full year in 2019, going into 2020. And that was like that season of my life where I was like, this is all I'm doing. Like I want to see. And ever since, once I went through that transformation where like I restructured my gut and I knew what it took to do that, like even though I haven't always been as good as I was like during that season, I know now that there's no going back for me. Like
Mhm.
if this was my normal, or like this is my healthy side, and this is my I eat bad, all of a sudden I shifted to like this is my super healthy, and my bad is like my old healthy, right? And that's kind of like what is going to like happen to people as they make progress. Because like once you feel good and you start to eat bad, and you're like, I don't want to do that again, and like you kind of like, I know that feels weird, and you go back to doing good stuff, but it's inconvenient, and it's you have a trip, you have a vacation, you have treats at work or whatever, and you do a little bit of bad, and you kind of like go back and forth. What's going to keep you on track is having a good reason why, and that takes time to develop. So we have some comments and questions that I want to go through. So Christina was asked earlier if we still get Arizona grass fed.
yes, we still get our stuff, even though we're in Colorado now, we still get stuff from Arizona grass fed. Most of their bone broth is still like
It's the
the best.
Yeah.
We've found some bone broth here locally and it's good.
Yeah, it's a Colorado, Denver.
Yeah, like
something.
it's good, but man, that one from Arizona is just so good. It's the best that we found, and we still get some of their beef as well. But we also found a local ranch here in Colorado that has high altitude grass fed yak and beef as well.
Mhm.
But I've never had yak, and once I tried it and learned a little bit more of high altitude, the high altitude grass fed, if you look into the fermented cod liver oil plus butter oil that we use, if you look into the research that what's his name, Weston Price did when he was coming up with that combination, he was seeking out high altitude grass fed cattle for the butter oil because he found a lot of benefits, from these from I guess the cattle that were at high altitude. So I was like just like looking into that, and I don't know if it was Siri that was listening to me or whoever was tracking me. All of a sudden, like I got an ad for a local ranch that had high altitude grass fed yak, and I'm like, oh yes, I want that. We tried it, and I've actually been eating it ever since. So it's been really yeah, it's been really good. So but yeah, we'll still get our Arizona stuff later on. How do you find these resources for good food? Um, I think mostly farmers markets. But not just going to farmers markets, because sometimes you'll go to farmers markets and like we go to
Not
farmers markets.
everything there is good.
Yeah, not everything is good. So you kind of, it's a combination of like you have to know what you're looking for in a way, but also you ask people. So for example, when we first came to Colorado, I was a little bit bummed out because like in Arizona, it's legal to sell raw milk, whereas in Colorado, it's not. You have to get herd shares, but to find, herd shares, like it was a little bit harder because you can't just go to a farmer's market and find. But we went to a farmer's market at one point and there was a lady who was selling eggs. And, so you talk to people, especially people that live in farms,
Local farmers.
they know other farmers. And so she was the one that pointed us to a farm that, had herd shares. And that's how we found the raw milk.
Was
So
it a farmer's market, or it was by a sourdough bakery? It
yeah,
wasn't.
and it wasn't a farmer's market,
It
it
was
was like
like
a
a
little
indoor
market
of like
sorts.
local people.
Yeah, but it kind of boils down to like getting out into the community
Mhm.
and meeting local people that are selling either local crafts and foods, basically. Like
Mhm.
that's how you go. And then knowing what to look for is the other part of that. I started making my own bone broth when I was doing, and it was pretty close to Arizona's. Yeah, nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we haven't tried doing that yet.
Yeah.
I don't know where we're gonna store our freezer isn't very big.
Yeah. I mean,
I don't know.
we purchased what do you call it? Um soup bones, the bone marrow bones basically to like make it. But we haven't actually made the actual broth. We should just end up, eating the bone marrow, like cooking it and cooking with it, and it's really good. But yeah. Yeah, slow cook it for 2 days. And I think, and that's the other thing
I
again,
think
like
we need a bigger crock pot.
we would need a bigger crock pot for one, but it's also like with our current schedules, like we're already doing a lot. Like like I brew kombucha. I also make Greek yogurt, right? So like I have to go pick up raw milk and then I make Greek yogurt out of it. So that's kind of like I'm slowly incorporating things.
Mhm.
I haven't gotten into bone broth, but I also like kind of want to get into sourdough. I just haven't started that because I know that once I start, it's another commitment.
Yeah, and then you also have to have space and organization around these things, so definitely not gonna start all of this at
Yeah.
once.
And again, like, because we struggle with time as well, just as much as, other people do. But again, I think part of like why I've enjoyed doing like study groups is because it kind of forces people to like jump in and do it. Otherwise, if I'm just showing up and like sharing about it, people are like, oh yeah, I'm learning about it, it's cool. But it's not until like you get a group, it's like, no, we're all doing it, and you feel like, hey, you either keep up with the group or you're falling behind. Like there's something about that group support and the accountability aspect of it that really helps out. And then you kind of make up your mind. It's like, oh yeah, like I know I should be doing my hydration. I know, like, if I want to make bone broth, that you're gonna do that. In my case, like I'm making Greek yogurt because that's like a source of probiotics, my kombucha and other things like that. So whatever works. I also started making a beet kvass, which is basically fermented beets. There's other things that I want to do. But yeah, I mean, this is sometimes like what it takes is your mind is gonna want to do what most people do. Like you're gonna the masses are gonna drag you their way. When you start doing this, you're going counterculture. You're doing the opposite of what a lot of people do, and you're gonna feel that push. Like people are gonna try to like bring you away, and you have to like fight that current.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, even if you do your own juicing, you have to go to the store, get all the fruit and vegetables, wash them, juice them, clean up after.
So
It's
much
a
work.
lot. But if you go and buy one of the juice cleanses from like
Yeah,
Clean Juice or a place, there's a Clean Juice by us,
yeah.
that you're gonna pay more money for it, but then you're saving time. So there's like,
But the other side to it too is like, I mean, I've been doing this for 14 years. Obviously, most people can start this way, but if you get serious about it and you completely restructure your gut flora, you can kind of get to this point where like this is one of the advantages of, like me, like sometimes I don't have time to do stuff, and I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna fast today, and I can pull it off, even though again, I don't
I
like to
can't.
fast. But that's why I can pull it off, is because I'm well nourished. I don't need it. And so it just, I don't know, sometimes like it's just easier to like go without. But on the other hand, like as this study group starts, like I was mentally preparing for it, and I'm like, there's some things that I used to do that I haven't done in a while, like my coconut lemon cooler smoothie. Like I started like bringing that back. I started to bring back other things that I've done in the past that I haven't done lately. And so it's kind of exciting to like have this energy of like, okay, I'm getting back into it, like I'm doing this. So all right, is this a
I
good
think
stopping
that's a
point?
good stopping point since we're over time.
Yeah, no, this has been great. Thank you guys for showing up. And
Yeah, thanks for your comments to read through some of them in more detail. I'm a bad multitasker.
yeah, yeah. Very cool. Well, I hope you guys got value out of this, and I hope that it helps you, especially for those of you who are in the study group. Yeah, we'll keep guiding you through, and can't wait to hear some of the success stories that come out of this. So
Yeah, that's exciting.
yeah. So thanks again, and we'll see you guys next time.
All right, have a good night.
Talk soon.
I saw this meme. Oh.